The Peasants, original title Chłopi, is out in theaters, new Polish film from the same people that previously made Loving Vincent, the 2017 Van Gogh movie. And again, this new one is made in the same way, which is to make the film look like a series of moving paintings, and more about that later. The film is the official Polish submission for this year's Oscars, and is based on a Nobel Prize winning book written by Władysław Reymont in the early 1900s. A book which I admittedly have never actually read in its entirety, despite it being required reading in Polish high schools, or perhaps because it is required reading. The story is about peasants. It takes place in a 19th century Polish village, and the central conflict begins with Boryna, an older guy, an older farmer whose wife recently died and who happens to own the most land around. His adult kids keep pestering him about signing over parts of the land to them so that they can have something for themselves. He stubbornly insists that he'll do this in his last will, but until he's alive and fit, he wants to keep the land as it is his. They keep saying, well, you're an old widower, what do you need it for? Step down. And he says, you know what? Fuck it. You say I'm a widower, I'm gonna marry again. And through arranged marriage, he takes a young girl named Jagna as his wife. She's the prettiest girl around, but she doesn't love him. Instead, romances Boryna's adult son, who's also married, which of course is bound to make a bad situation worse. So, as far as I was told, the book itself is quite sprawling, and in that it tells the story, it tells the story between the characters, but it also deals with a bunch of elements of historical background of those times. It details a lot of customs and traditions of Polish countryside, and it also explores the class struggle of the peasants against wealthier, nobler people. And now, the film is definitely more singularly focused on the romance and tragedy part. The rest is mainly just background. And in terms of the story, I'd say it's it's kind of like Jane Austen stuff or Wuthering Heights, except everybody is poor and miserable. It's one of those stories which are kind of exhausting at some point because there's not really a sympathetic character in sight to latch onto, to someone to admire and to connect with. Everyone is a varying degree of a shitty person, and you just sort of watch them slowly spiral, slowly make their situations worse through either stupid decisions or things like anger, hate, envy. I will say it is engaging because the characters are mostly layered and not one-dimensional, and there is something captivating about this exploration of human vice and how much tragedy it can bring. It also helps that the film looks very uniquely, which, let's be fair, it is its main selling point. Once you see the trailer or some images from it, you instantly know, you instantly know the most unique thing about it. The movie was essentially made as a series of real animated paintings. It took multiple painters months of work to create all the images for the scenes. My understanding is that whenever it's nature or background or wide shots, those are straight up just paintings, and in some cases they're actually inspired by real paintings from the time period. And the stuff with actors was shot normally with real people, and then rotoscoped onto that was the paint. The result is very interesting for sure. It does remind me heavily of Loving Vincent, but manages to be distinctly different in style. The images are quite striking, while still doing a very good job of letting the performances be visible through the paint layer, so we don't actually lose any of the actors' work. There are multiple scenes where I went, wow, this shot is amazing. The transitions between the different seasons and chapters come to mind, but to me some of the most memorable scenes were two dancing sequences, very contrasting. The first one is during the wedding. Jagna is dancing with some of the guests in a frantic, quick tune, with images swirling around very quickly and the sort of sinister faces of other villagers surrounding her. There's something about the vibe of that scene which makes it terrifying. It almost feels like a pagan ritual where she's being sacrificed. And then the second one, quite soon after that, is between her and Antek, Boryna's son, where it's just it's just sexual tension and lust and unbound attraction, and everything in the background blurs to nothing. Really clever way of establishing the character's state of mind, and the difference between them in those two technically similar sequences. I also want to say I loved the score, the music. I think it's very rooted in Polish tradition and reminded me strongly of the score used for the Witcher games, which also drew heavily from the Slavic and even more specifically Polish lore and culture. All in all, I think it's a really good movie, where the gimmick of it being painted is not the only attractive thing about it. It actually tells a very compelling story, and the visuals simply elevate it instead of serving as a crutch. It is sad and depressing, but it's certainly very good.